Nice to have a little cooler week, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's been tolerable.
Well, I heard about this kindergarten teacher that her kids were complaining that the work was so hard, and kind of in the spirit of Love Your Life workshop, she said to the kids, now, anybody who thinks they're dumb, raise their hand, because she's going to teach them a lesson, because well, nobody's going to say they're dumb. She goes, see, you're not dumb. Well, then little Johnny, she said, anybody who thinks they're dumb, stand up. She didn't want to make it too easy, thinking nobody would do that. Well, little Johnny stood up and kind of surprised her, and she said, now, Johnny, you don't really think you're dumb, do you? He says, no, ma'am. He said, but I sure didn't want you standing there all by yourself.
That's good. That's good.
Maybe I should stop there. Leave them laughing. But I'll tell this other. That was a short one. But I heard about these three guys, and they were hiking. They needed to get to the other side of this pretty good sized river. And they finally stopped, and one guy said, God, give me the strength to get across this river. And poof, just like that, he had these big, strong arms and legs. So he jumps in, and they watch him, and he takes an hour, but he swims across that river. The next guy, thinking a little bit, he goes, God, give me the strength and some tools to get across this river. So poof, just like that, he's stronger, and there's a boat, a canoe, and he jumps in, and he grabs some sticks, and he paddles his way. Just takes him 30 minutes, but he gets across the river. Third guy says, he's thinking, he says, God, give me the strength and tools and the intelligence to get across this river. And poof, he was a woman. And she looks at a map, and she walks 5 minutes upstream and goes across a bridge.
Oh, that's good.
I pick on the women a lot, so I thought I would
Give us a...
tell you that fictional story. Obvious fiction. Obvious fiction. Well, welcome to the Love Your Life workshop, where you come every Sunday to hear me tell you that your life is worth loving. And that's hard to think about sometimes when you've been diagnosed with cancer. How does it feel to have somebody tell you, love your life? What does that mean? Love your life. For me, it meant love my life, even though, I started losing my hair, which I do not like that.
Well, I don't like it either.
Yeah.
I used to have a whole head of hair back
Yeah.
last year. Now look at it. My ponytail is getting shorter. I just combed it this morning. I lost about that much in the back.
Wow. Which is kind of like the story we talked about, where Jesus says, even this death is not going to end in death, but it was going to end in physical death twice. Imagine that, going through physical death twice. But Jesus saying a blind man from birth, there's going to be glory to God in this, and this idea that no matter what happens to us, or the Bible says, in all things, God works for good. And this belief that we have to wrestle with, that is my life valuable? Is my life valuable? And I think Jesus dealt with a lot of people, and he dealt with a society in which a certain group of people said, we are valuable, and everybody else felt like they were worth nothing. And what Jesus said is, everyone is worth the same. Everyone is valuable. Every person is valuable. And so it's to take a look at my life and to wake up each day and to believe that no matter what my circumstance is, or how I was, where I was born, and the gifts that I have or think I don't have, no matter what that I am of infinite value and worth, and to love this life, because you know what? It's nobody else's job to love me. It's nobody else's job to lift me up. It's nobody else's job to decide on a course of direction for my life. It's nobody else's job to get through my day. That's my job. And if I take charge of that and love this life that God has given me, then it's amazing how I see and experience Him begin to work in my life and in my mind. So things that we struggle with, does God know me? Does God know me? Does God know me? Does God know me personally and know everything about me? And then when I say that, then I say, part of me wants to say, well then, okay, then why haven't you made things better for me? Okay, and then as I struggle with that question, and I realize, well, I have something to do with where I am. I have something to do with my situation too. And yet, to come to the conclusion that God knows me and He loves me and He is involved in my life, that's quite a statement to make, really. I understand why people say, I don't see evidence of God. I don't feel Him involved in my life. I don't know that He knows that I'm here. I think He just wound us up and He's far up. I understand that. I mean, I understand how they feel that way. I understand why Trish, you would say sometimes in moments like, why did you do this to me? I understand that, I understand why sometimes we look at our situation and say, how could you let this happen? How could you let this happen to my sister? How could you let this happen to my marriage? How could you let this happen to my best friend? And yet to work through that and to say, and yet I do believe you know me and you love me and you're involved. That's how you say, wake up and say, I'm going to love this life because God does. This imperfect life, this life that has imperfect knowledge, imperfect understanding, and makes mistakes. I'm going to love this life because God does. So it's a workshop because we practice at it. We don't perfect it. We practice. We try to practice well. As I said before, we used to tell our kids in baseball, practice perfect. Practice doing it perfectly. Because if you're going to practice doing it wrong, you're going to perfect doing it wrong. And yet, but practice is understanding that we're working at it and we're not always perfect. But we seek to try to make good improvements, each day and each week. So, one thing I try to do is I try to look at what I feel is happening in my life as I work to be the person I most want to be, which is a daily thing. Sometimes it's an hour by hour, a minute by minute thing. Who is this person I most want to be? And is making little adjustments as we go. And so today I want to talk just for a few minutes about practicing connecting. Practicing connecting. Practicing connecting. And I'll explain a little bit more of what I mean by that. But I believe that we were created to connect. Remember, when we were kids, I get it all wrong if I tried to. We had this crazy song about the foot bones connected to the ankle bones connected to the shin bone. And in becoming a personal trainer, we learned about all these connections, and we talk about this, what they call the kinetic chain, which is that, none of your parts of your body operate independently. They're all connected, and they're created for movement. But they're not all connected to every part. Your foot is not connected to your head, But yet, it affects your head. Everything's how everything works, all connected and affects each other, but they're all made for connection. And it's amazing as I study the body and how it's connected, it's amazing this design that I believe God has created in the human body that teaches us how we connect as people. I mean, that's what Paul said. Paul said he described the church as a body in which everybody's connected to each other and affects each other and has a part. But we're made to connect. We are created to connect. And if I keep that in my mind, that we were made for connection. Remember, I read you that poem a few weeks ago about, here's another day, how are we going to spend it? Or how, and what has worked before, I would give that preference. Whatever has worked before, I'd give that preference. And that's been in my mind for the last several weeks. And as I get up some days and I'm tired or discouraged, and I think, well, how am I going to spend this day? Well, let's let's give preference to what has worked. Has being discouraged all day worked? Has being lazy all day worked? Now, I've done that, but it doesn't work. All right, but connection works. Connection works. I think about, we're reading through the book of John. I think about John describing how God so loved the world that what did he do? He gave his son. And so John describes that this light of life, this creator of the world who was there from the beginning, this power of creation, became a human being. And in John 1:14 it says basically like he pitched his tent right with us. He became one of us. He connected. God, in order to show his love and show us how to live and bring light to us, he did it by connecting. Connecting with human beings. And we see that it's just in the way that Jesus lived. Now think about his statement one time when he said to his disciple, "Who do you think I am?" And Peter finally says, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." And sometimes we focus so much on just those words. But I look at it as Peter making a statement is that, we have come to the conclusion that you are God who made all things, this mysterious God who created all things, but you have become a human being and have connected with us. We're standing before you now. We're connecting. And what does Jesus say? Upon this rock, or upon this statement, upon this truth, upon this reality, I will build my group. Now you probably know that is, I will build my church. But I say group because that's the word Jesus used. If he said, in our language, if he said a word church, they didn't have a word for church. There was no concept of church in his time as we know it. They had the synagogue that they went to. They had their group. But Jesus says, I'll build my group. The word that he used could have been the same word used for a mob that gathered on the street corner for any purpose. He says, I'm going to get together a group based on this reality that I am God in spirit who's come down to connect with human beings. And a group. What is a group? But a group of people who are together who have connection, have some sort of connection. And so Jesus said, I'm not here to just form, inspire individuals. I'm here to get people in a group who connect. And I think what we beautifully do here, everything, we connect. It may not be what any of us at some point in our lives kind of thought of when we thought of church. It's maybe not exactly, but it's a group that is connecting in order to connect with God and to live for him and to live and to love our lives as he's given us life to love. If you gave me one word, so give me one word that describes the purpose of getting together as God's people, I would say encourage. Encourage. And then if I could add a couple words, encourage to connect. If you go, I think it's in Hebrews 10, it says, I think some of the people were already kind of saying, well, what's the, I've got God in my life. What's the purpose of getting together? And the writer of Hebrews says, don't stop meeting together. This is in Hebrews 10. He says, but get together to encourage each other to love and do good. Encourage each other to love and do good. What's love? It's connecting. Jesus told his disciples, here's how people will know you're one of mine, is by your love, by how you connect with people. It's by connecting. And so here is the life of God who had created all things and is now a human being, and he walks through Judea and he walks through Galilee, and it was amazing how he connected with people. Just wherever he went, connected with people. You know, he's a man who felt the feel of the desert under his feet. He was so connected with us and what life is. He felt that. He felt tired. He felt fatigue. He felt hunger. He knew what it was like to go days without food. He knew what it was like to be bumped up against by the crowds. He probably knew what it was like to be in the middle of a group of people who hadn't bathed for days and weeks following what that smelled like, you know. He knew what it was like to be hungry, to be put upon, what to be touched, to have somebody pour oil on him, to touch a leper. His life was connection. You know, his life was connection. I think that what he was teaching us is that what we were made for is to connect. But, you know, that's not always easy, is it? How many of us get up every day and say, I just want to connect with people?
Well, nobody raised their hands.
You know? Sometimes we just, you know, we may love people and want to, but sometimes we've had enough. You know, we're like, it reminds me of a story of a Quaker guy who said, you know, he had had enough, and he said to his friend, he goes, friend, I'm a peaceful man, but thou art standing where I'm about to strike. Can you say that again?
It took a second, but I got it.
Yeah.
He said, thou art, friend, I'm a peaceful man, but thou art standing where I'm about to strike. In other words, this nonviolent Quaker, he had enough, you know? And so we, you know, that's kind of the tough thing, is that we live in lives in which it's hard to connect. Sometimes it's hard to connect because we don't want to. We want to pull away, you know? And we want to say, look, I've tried that. It doesn't work. We want to say, look, I've been disappointed too much. I'm not going to get involved. Or I tried to love and look what happened, so I'm never going to love again. You know, we probably all have said that at one point. And then we say everything in between. I'm tired of dealing with these people, you know. And sometimes there's some truth to that. You know? But the danger is if we just build a life that just pulls farther and farther back from connecting. And I'm not saying, okay, everybody needs to go out and just get involved in everything out in the community. It's going to be different for each one. I think that's what Paul describes the body. Each part is different and has its part, but there is connection. We need, whether it's here or somewhere else on Sunday, and not just this, but we need connection. Whether we feel like it sometimes or not, we need it. You know.
I don't think like me cut you off. I hear you keep saying that connection. What are you saying? It's not we can't live by ourselves, or we need people around us. And I'm see where you actually.
Well,
Is a specific purpose that we need to connect with each other?
I think there's a lot of
goal with connection. I'm trying to see where you go.
I think that I'm just trying to establish. I believe that you know when Jesus came to the earth, when God wanted to show His nature and His love, He did it by becoming a person who did not stand up on a pedestal and just speak out to the world, but He came down and he lived among us and touched us and loved and got involved and went to Mary and Martha's house and listened to them and cried with them. He connected. And there's a tendency in our lives sometimes to want to pull back and not connect with each other, with people, be open, to close off our hearts, close off ourselves. And I'm saying that I believe that what Jesus compels in us is to move toward people, move toward the community, our communities. You know, this is just one community. Where you live is a community. Where you work is a community. Where you live in the big sense, Elkton is a community. So we live in a larger community. But that we, I don't know if that answers your question, but maybe as I go on, it'll answer a little bit more. But to connect. we tend to sometimes to want to, fall into self-pity. And it drives us away from other people. And we all feel these things, and I think, Trish, you described it pretty well earlier, that we go through these things, but the problem is we don't want to stay there. We don't want to stay there. And it's a hard thing to come to sometimes, but sometimes we just got to raise ourselves up and say, no, it's good for me to get out and connect. It's good for me to be here and connect. It's good for me, if you live with other people, it's good to connect. And sometimes we just want to be done with them, and we need our times of being alone. There's an interesting story I've talked about before, but in Jeremiah, he talks about the people of Israel had been carried away to Babylon. So they had lost their freedom, they'd lost their country, they were enslaved in Babylon, and they were kind of just all put together in this, formed basically a new little town there. But, think of thousands of people being carried off. And one of the words to them is that while you were there in this foreign land as slaves, seek the good